So over the last few months, I've been watching through the DreamWorks franchises with my kids. We watched Shrek, we watched Kung Fu Panda, and today I'm going to stop and rank all 4 Madagascar films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of the 4 Madagascar films. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. With that in mind, going into this, I had never actually watched one of the Madagascar films from beginning to end. I'd seen little clips here and there, but I couldn't really have told you what the plot was. Certainly didn't know much of anything about the sequels or anything like this. So this is the viewing of someone that is new to the franchise, essentially. One more thing before we get started, I do have a second channel where I post a bunch of vlogs with my kids, fan mail unboxings, little adventures that we go on, and today we got a special companion video that goes right along with this one where I sat down with my kids and they shared their ranking of the Madagascar films and their thoughts on each of them. So you can check that out at this link right above, and let's get started. In last place for me is The Penguins of Madagascar. This one was just kind of a swing and a miss for me. It just felt so far removed from the original concept and premise of this franchise of zoo animals ending up out in the wild. Now it's turned into spy penguins team up with super spies to battle an evil mad scientist octopus that wants to turn penguins into mutants so people won't like them anymore. It's just like we've gone very far away from this thing started, in which case there's nothing really attaching it to anything else. It just feels like they had a whole bunch of ideas like, what else can we do? Let's get wilder and crazier and bigger. And so it just felt all too broad in the nature of the comedy and the nature of the story for me. In fact, given when this came out, it felt kind of like a Despicable Me knockoff, especially as it went along. Even some of the design of these ships and everything was like, this just feels like what they might have done with a Despicable Me spinoff rather than what would have made sense as a spinoff continuation of what they'd been doing with the Madagascar franchise and the penguins in particular. And one more thing that was distracting while watching it, the aspect ratio actually changes at certain points in time. I really noticed it in the finale where, like, as the doors open and they start releasing this gas, the gas actually expands and the aspect ratio of the frame grows to the whole size of the screen. And throughout the finale, it keeps cutting back and forth between these tighter shots and these wider shots, which just seemed like a really strange thing to do with an animated movie. I don't really like it when they do that with any movie, but I know why they do it with cameras, but with an animated film, it just seemed weird. In third place for me was Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. Now, I thought this actually was a pretty nice way to kind of bookend this trilogy and close out the franchise. They found some ways to kind of go full circle with our journey of them starting at a zoo, traveling to Madagascar, to Africa, to Europe, loop back around, and have kind of a satisfying conclusion by the time that the credits roll that feels like our characters have really gone on a journey and they've explored something. At the same time, the journey throughout the middle of the story felt a little bit been there, done that, and stretched a bit thin and scattered. We're literally going all around Europe. And so part of kind of what worked was the journey from one place to another in the first 2 films. And this one just felt like we're going all over the place and not really situating anywhere, just continuing to hop from different environment to a different environment. Also coming after the second one that I felt had really strong emotional ties to it and tried to have this big, wild, wacky adventure, but also tied to relationships a lot more and responsibilities and expectations. And this one, it felt tried to have a little bit of emotion, but abandoned some of that. So it just kind of felt a bit disappointing for that reason to me. Real quick, before I give you my top 2, remember to share your ranking of the Madagascar films down below in the comments section. Also, remember, over on my second channel, I've got a video with these 2 where they share their ranking of the Madagascar films. If you've always wanted to know, what do my kids think about DreamWorks franchises, you can now find out right over there on my second channel. Let's see, it's right there.
Where?
There's a link up there. I'm going to put a link up there. You can't see it right now, but I'm going to put a link in the video. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Baby wants to leave.
Bye, baby.
Our runner-up is the original Madagascar. This is a pretty fun little premise for an animated film about a bunch of zoo animals voiced by a bunch of really funny people, all very high energy. And what if you took these zoo animals and sent them on this adventure where they ended up in the wild in Madagascar? That's just a solid setup for a film like this. And it's unassuming, it doesn't expect too much of you, and it's just kind of a setup for a bunch of gags. And that's really kind of the things that holds it back a little bit for me, is that it felt a little bit more like a strong premise rather than a strong plot. It's more like, how can we get them out there and just have fun with it rather than a specific journey for the characters. I mean, they have little bits of journeys in there, but the key thing is all the setup, and they did have a lot of fun with that setup. But in first place for me is Madagascar Escape to Africa. For me, this is the film that just kind of brought all the elements of this franchise together the best. At its core, I think it has the most clear narrative, the strongest character arcs, and most resonant emotion to it, while still being jam-packed with all the hyper-energetic, absurd situations that you expect from the franchise. It kicks off with the backstory of one of our lead characters and how he got separated from his family and ended up at a zoo in New York City, and then through a pretty contrived set of circumstances, we end up back with that pride. And so you have this whole very primal journey for the characters with the relationships, him connecting with his father, ended up disappointing him, the dynamics of the tribe, he has to prove himself. All of that just has a little bit more oomph to it. It also creates a scenario where you actually have conflict in it. It's not just a bunch of setups and ridiculous scenarios and just throwing a bunch of stuff at the screen. We have a clear journey for these characters. We know how they need to change. And along that way, they find all the fun shenanigans for each of them to get into. One of the big standouts, of course, is the old lady that doesn't like the kitty, doesn't like the tiger, and gets in boxing matches with them, which just makes for an interesting tone where you're going from like serious moment about father and son being reunited to boxing match, martial arts fight between a tiger, a lion, and this old lady. Put all those ingredients together, and this is the one that was the most memorable, the best story, the best emotion, and some of the best laughs for me. So it comes in at number 1. If you want to check out that video with my kids' ranking of the Madagascar films, it's right over there. If you want some more of my DreamWorks franchise rankings, they're right down there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.